It's April 28th. I'm with John Jekovich, 98-year-old World War veteran, and we're talking about his book, Their Mother's Son. And we're on chapter 9 on page 275, and we're starting off at the church service and the Bulge. The church service and the Bulge. I went back outside where I had left Lape and told him to bring the rest of the squad up. They followed me into the barn, and when we saw the mounds of hay, they just collapsed into them. And I warned them no fires and to change their socks and fill their boots with straw and dry them up.
So you warned them to put straw in their shoes too, right? You told them to put straw in their shoes? Straw? You told them to put straw in their shoes?
I also changed my long sleeve undershirt and finally stretched out in the warm straw, hoping that I would not fall asleep, opened a K-ration and started to gulp it down. I then thought of the Germans I killed. Who was he? Someone, someplace, would also grieve for him and not see him again in his lifetime. I also thought of the action in taking his life. I did not feel elated now, as I had when I first fired on him and ended his life. I could see him lying there, not too far from where Fink was lying. His face was all distorted and in pain and anguish. I had ended his life in a split second of revenge and taken Fink's life, also in desperation to save my own life.
John, you need some water?
No.
I looked upon the dead German, fleeting glimpse of my dead father lying on the marble slab in the morgue of the hospital that fateful night in October. Perhaps this was the second person whose life I had taken away indirectly and other more directly and traumatically. I caught myself napping and I decided to stand up and walk about since there was no windows in the barn. I walked back to where the squad was and they were all sound asleep. It'd be a shame to waken them now for guard duty since they are relatively safe here as long as no one spotted us.
Yeah.
It would take the rest of the night and a cat nap near the door entrance. I rolled a tractor up against the door to secure it and thought that it would certainly hear someone trying to enter.
Look who's coming.
Uh-oh, who?
Everybody's asking me if you're going to be here tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
Oh, she's back, huh?
Hi, Claire.
Hi there.
We got a seat reserved for you, Claire.
She's already been here once.
Huh?
She's already been here once.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Here she comes.
Is Chris here tomorrow?
Claire.
And how about Rob, what's his name, Richard?
Richard will be here. Yes. Okay.
Nice to see you again, Claire. Have a seat. We got it reserved for you.
Right there.
Yes, ma'am. What can I do for you?
We got it reserved. Right there, Claire. There you go. I'll just give you a little catching up. They're in the enemy lines now, and they're dodging soldiers, German soldiers left and right. And one of his buddies named Sergeant Fink, he had to go find them because Sergeant Fink didn't come back, and he found his buddy Sergeant Fink laying face down in the snow like someone already shot him. And so there was a sniper up in a tree, and the German snipers were wearing like white sheets to camouflage them in the snow, but it didn't camouflage them from the green evergreens. So my father laid in about 4 rounds on him, and he died not too far from where Fink was. So they moved out of there very quickly, and they're walking in the woods for many hours, and they finally found some old barn where everyone went into, and the soldiers are so excited. They found big bales of hay, which they could jump in and sleep and stay warm. So that's where we're at now, Claire.
Right, John? Dave?
Right, Dad? John?
Yeah.
John Jekovich, was that correct? You found a big barn there?
Yeah?
Okay. All right. By now I was bitterly cold and bustily. A wool scarf around my mouth and nose to shelter my face. We must have walked several miles past the barn and had stayed in when we came upon a small village. Creeping closer, we found that there were Americans from the 3rd Armored. So you're bumping, in this active duty, you're bumping into American soldiers on one side and you're bumping into the enemy on the other side.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how close everybody was.
John, what was your outfit name again? What number were you? What squadron and stuff?
Right.
What squadron were you
What
in?
squad number?
What?
What was your squad number?
Squad number?
Yeah. Was it 291st?
291st, yeah.
And what was your dog tag number?
42092 29557.
Was that actually your social security number back then?
Huh?
Were the soldier's dog tag number actually their social security number?
No, different.
Completely
yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But when you traveled to California with your suitcases, you didn't put your dog tag number on it, you put your social on those suitcases.
What was on.
Okay.
But they let that go by, but now you couldn't do it.
Now you couldn't do it.
Now you couldn't do it.
Okay.
Now you couldn't do it.
Okay, so anyways, as we approached, staying well into the trees to avoid detection, I noticed several takes around the house. Creeping closer, we found that there were Americans from the 3rd Armored. Thinking that they might be tanks captured by the Germans, we looked further for verification that there were really Americans occupying them. So you seen the tanks you ran into, that they're American tanks, but you also had a second thought that they might be tanks that the Germans.
Yeah, no, they're trying to get out of the heat.
So you had to
cold.
verify everything before you moved in.
And they did what they should do. They went in the house.
Oh, okay. So the armored tank division went in the house.
Yeah.
And they left their tanks outside. Okay. For further verification that there were really Americans occupying them. Sure enough, there were GIs about, and we crossed upon a field to join them. I talked to the CO, after which we offered us some hot chow and a warm place to sleep. He said they would try to get in touch with our outfit and find out what our orders were. So no one knew what your orders were. No communications.
Yeah.
So you're just basically wandering in the woods of Germany.
Well, they were lost. They were lost.
Okay. In the meantime, he stayed to get warm and get some dry clothes on and take it easy. I thanked him and we went over to the fireplace and sat on a discarded ammo box. The rest of the squad joined me around the cozy fireplace. We were not too much talkative mood, but only wanted to be someplace that was warm. We were told that our company was bivouacked just north of here and that we could hitch a ride on a 6x6 going that way. We pulled up into our bivouacked area and I was summoned by CP, Captain Dreward, wanted to know what happened to us. When I mentioned that we lost Fink, he did not seem too concerned and did not ask for any details. He reluctantly took Fink's dog tag, not asking if we had eaten anything or needed dry clothes. He stated that the company was pulling out shortly. With that, he turned and left me standing there. So Captain Dreward wasn't a decent commander.
Yeah.
I went back to the squad and informed them that we're pulling out. They were to get their stuff together and make sure they had a full canteen of water. Sergeant Whalen stopped by and said that he was sorry to hear about Fink and that I would take over the squad. He also stated I was to continue using Fink's M1 and pick up some ammo at the supply truck. Soon the artillery started to move out, their prime movers dragging the howitzers behind. It was then that we learned that we're to attack that very afternoon. Again, I got a sickening feeling in a pit of my stomach. It was that dreaded sensation of not knowing what was going on. Would you live to see another daylight, or would this turn out to be another dry run? There was always the unknown and the build-up for the worst, and expecting, hoping for the best. As we moved to the snow-covered forest, it was almost late afternoon, and the woods took on an eerie, ghost-like appearance. I thought of Fink, probably still lying there we had fallen. I did not want to suffer the same fate. How could I prevent it? I told everyone to keep his eye open for snipers in the trees and stay spread out. As we filed through the woods, we made frequent stops, and a rifle company scouted the area looking for Germans. It was turning colder again. As I started to shiver as we lay on the ground, waiting for the okay to move up, I found out that we're to attack a village of Miat Road, nestled among the rolling hills, about 4 miles northeast of St. Vith. We were to march to E Company and were told to seek out our position and to cover our firing for the riflemen of the 2nd platoon. I secured a spot and set up the gun with Lape as a gunner and one of the ammo bearers. I had selected for assistant gunner. Here again, once was aware of the hodgepodge arrangement in the company. There was no semblance of order and only kind of concern for the lonely GI, and no kind of concern whatsoever for the lonely GI. He was left to his own ingenuity. Fink's demise was a glaring example. As a squad leader, I performed part of my duties, checking the direction and the effectiveness of firing the machine gun and giving the proper adjustments to the gunner. All this while just being thrust into the position, no training whatsoever. So, when they had you to take over to a higher position in command, they had you no training whatsoever.
Yeah.
They just said, it's yours now.
Yeah. He's out of it.
What?
He's out of it.
Okay. Just then, E Company started to move out, and the 105s and 155s opened up to the rear. I signaled to Lape, commenced firing, and began to watch for the telltale tracers as they were spinning forward to disrupt the German lines. I motioned to Lape to raise the level of fire as he was firing too low and was afraid of hitting our own troops. That wouldn't be good. We were getting some mortar fire as the Germans had already spotted our gun position from a whiff of puff smoke. Our gun belched as it fired. So you told Lape to raise the level of the machine gun because it might hit your own troops if it was too low, right?
Yeah.
What was the distance of those high-powered heavy machine guns?
The distance?
Yeah, how far would they go?
Probably 2 or 3 miles.
They're very effective at distance.
Well,
So-
I mean, further out it goes, less accurate it is. It
So-
sways.
If Lape was following low, American soldiers in front might be a target. So you had him raise the heavy machine gun higher so we get to the Germans
Yeah.
and not to the Americans. Was there a lot of casualties with friendly fire?
Yeah, that was one of many,
One of many, yeah.
Yeah, one of many.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, take care, Claire.
Good to see you.
All right,
you the
all right.
best.
Good night.
Have a nice evening, Claire.
You all say.
Okay, bye, Claire. Good night, Claire. Good night.
Night, night. or so.
Yeah. Oh, boy. E Company got pinned down in an open field before the village, and they called for tanks. We continued firing to take some of the firing off of the pinned down GIs. The tanks, a platoon of Shermans, passed our position and overtook the pinned down riflemen. As the tanks passed them, they got up and followed behind. Did most of the tanks survive the war, or was many of the tanks destroyed?
Well, the tanks were hit with heavy artillery.
So what was your high casualty rate for operators of the tanks?
Oh yeah, because you were in a contested area.
What was the highest casualty rate of what position?
Oh,
What position in the military had the highest casualty rate?
probably tankers.
Tankers?
Yeah.
How about
Oh, then the line companies, down the line companies.
heavy casualties?
Well, probably 25-30%.
Wow. The Germans had fled. When the tanks reached the village, they opened up a beast, followed by artillery and our own mortars. We moved up to cover the riflemen as they went through the village. The Germans had fled the village, leaving behind much of their equipment and some wounded. We set up our outskirts of the village in preparation for a counterattack. It never materialized. So when the tanks came in and all the Americans came into this small village, the able-bodied Germans left, right? The able-bodied Germans deserted that village.
Yeah.
But they left around most of their supplies and many of their own wounded. So what would you have to do with their wounded, the German wounded soldiers?
Send them back with the medics.
So the medic would care for them just like they would an American
Oh, yeah.
soldier. There'd be no different. And do you remember how much supplies and equipment the German soldiers left in that town when they abandoned it quickly? Do you remember the kind of things
Well, they left the military equipment, they left civilian equipment, they left food.
They just left.
They could carry it.
I mean, but you think the reason why they left so expeditiously was because the tanks were coming all around them?
The tanks were zeroed in on them, yeah.
So that would have been big trouble?
Yeah.
Okay. That would have been big trouble. The Germans had fled the village, leaving behind much equipment and some wounded. We set up the outskirts of the village in preparation for a counterattack. Did they ever come back and counterattack the village?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. While regrouping in the village, we learned that Captain Dreward had stepped on a mine, severing both of his legs at the knee. Wow. That was horrible. Yeah, it was horrible. So he was done.
It was done, yeah.
He would be evacuated to a hospital in France and England and finally the U.S. He was out of this war for good. But what a price he had to pay for the privilege of exiting this war. I had no strong feelings upon hearing about Captain Dreward. His attitude upon hearing about Fink was still vivid in my mind. My only thought was that I envied him and that he was returning stateside and was out of the war. During the war, did they have many, like they do today, conscientious objectors?
You mean civilians?
Yeah, no.
In the
Soldiers
army?
that were listed, and they said they're objectors to the war, conscientious objectors. Did they have many of those during World War II?
Yeah, they didn't get in the regular army though.
But what happens if the army
Well, they
draft?
wound up in medics or some stupid thing.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Because I just read in the story yesterday, have you ever seen the little TV show back in the 60s? It was called Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that show, Leave
Yeah,
It to
yeah.
And the father, his name was Ward.
Lord, yeah.
Ward Cleaver. He was a conscientious objector.
Hugh Beaumont.
Hugh Beaumont, he was a conscientious objector during World War II, and they put him as a medic. So
Yeah.
exactly what you said.
Yeah.
He did. They put him as a medic. Did the medics have to carry a gun?
Son?
Did the medics have to carry?
No, no. They were neutral.
By daylight of 18th of December, German tank columns were driving deep into the sectors of all the American defenses, all aimed at Belgium, town called Bastogne, the most important rail and road center in the Ardennes. There was mass confusion all along the sector. No one knew the real situation, especially our division, and it trickled down to the individual unit. German infantry columns were racing for Willits, the southern route to Bastogne.
That's Belgium? Is that Belgium?
Bastogne. Where's Bastogne?
Bastogne?
Yeah,
Belgium.
Belgium. The two American airborne divisions, the 82nd and the 101st, were moving to the Ardennes from France to stem the tide on the onrushing German infantry and tanks. We attached to the Combat Command B of the 10th Armored Division and told to form a perimeter, a defense screen in front of Bastogne. The three main points be the village 5 miles to the north and one the same distance due east on the St. Vith Road and one on the Wiltz Road.
Yeah.
We set up a roadblock. We were tensely awaiting the first attack. Infantry stragglers would run into our lines, telling wild stories of overwhelming numbers of tanks and infantry overcoming their positions. They had disregarded and discarded all their fighting equipment. None had maps, and when the action started, they took to the cellars. There was no attempt to hold these stragglers. Most of the time, they just continued to roam aimlessly and would soon wander off to be captured by the Germans or at times freeze to death in the woods.
Wow.
So there was a lot of American stragglers, soldiers, that would just, you said, hide in basements and just kind of wander around.
Well, not so much, not so much.
But
no.
there's a few of them then.
Yeah.
And they either got killed or they froze to death.
You always have that.
At 5:30 hours, a group of hat tracks could be heard and seen approaching the roadblocks. In the darkness, the outposts could not tell they were friendly or enemy. The sentry to the front yelled, "Halt!" 4 times. The first vehicle pulled off to a grinding halt within a few yards of our roadblock. Someone in a half-track yelled something in German. We opened up with our machine gun, and from the bank on the right side of the road, GIs showered the half-track column with hand grenades and bazookas.
Wow.
There was a loud screaming, and some of the Germans jumped out or fell from the half-tracks and lay in the road. The rest of the enemy column quickly unloaded and deployed into the ditches around the road. So that was a very surprising situation when the Americans are saying halt, thinking it might be our guys,
Yeah.
and then it came out German language yelling across.
Yeah, they were surprised. They were surprised.
Did the Germans do this intentionally, or were the Germans surprised? Were the Germans surprised?
Some of them were German surprised, yeah. And a lot of times you couldn't use them because they were different calibration.
Yeah.
They wouldn't fit our weapons.
Okay. At 8:30 hours, 2 Tiger tanks nosed out of the fog and stopped within 20 yards of our position. A 57 millimeter anti-tank gun to the right of the road was no more than 30 yards from the tanks. A medium tank with a 75 millimeter gun was looking straight at them. We opened up on the 2 tanks, and the riflemen picked up with their bazookas, along with their anti-tank gun and a medium tank, all fired at the same time as the 2 Tiger tanks. In a minute, both tanks were reduced to tangled metal.
Yeah.
So, what did it look like when everyone shot at him at once? Was there
Well, they
much,
melted those tanks.
there wasn't much left?
No.
And where were the soldiers inside the tanks?
They tried to get out, but if they got wounded, they couldn't get out of that tank.
Have you been inside of a tank?
Yeah, I was glad I wasn't a tanker.
It's very tight, right?
Yeah, yeah.
By mid-morning, the entire Panzer Division, more than 30 tanks at different vantage points, was coming down the road, straight at us.
Wow.
Leading enemy formations were 1,000 yards away. Everyone fired what they had when they were close to 800 yards. The tanks on the ridge halted and shelled the town. Other tanks were swinging around the right flank, but on the left, enemy armor was already within 200 yards of our position. Little knots of men on foot were coming up behind the German tanks. A platoon of tank destroyers added firepower with its gun, but they were no match for the superior Tigers. 9 Mark IVs and Mark Vs were hit straight away. 3 ended up in flames. There were too many of them and too few of us. 3 Shermans would get into firing position, and the Tigers and the Panzers would pick them off with their superior firepower. A major came running by shouting, "Pull back, pull back." We left hastily, pulled the gun out and hightailed it to 2 remaining vehicles left in the area. The rest had scrambled with great urgency to the next village, hoping to escape the onslaught of the Tigers. Was the Tigers the most powerful tank during the whole war?
Oh, yeah, the heavy weapons, yeah.
Why do you think our tanks could compete with the
They
Tigers?
they were built for speed.
Tigers were fast,
Yeah.
but they must have burned a lot of fuel.
Oh, well, yeah.
So
that
they
was a
must
big problem.
So they must have ran out of fuel and then big problems.
Well, they had 5-gallon tanks strapped to the sides of the vehicles. Every place they went, they loaded it up.
Yeah, but I imagine those Tigers only got about 1 or 2 miles a gallon.
Yeah.
And then once they run out of fuel, they're done.
Well, no, they're pretty versatile. They find out where the fuel is.
Oh, they did, okay. All types of personnel were used. Headquarters people, stragglers, survivors, walking wounded, anything that could be moved or thrown into the line. We waited for the Germans to attack from the east, but the 2nd Panzer Division, which had crushed both our roadblocks, had no intentions of coming through the small village. About a mile short of the village, they swung north onto a road leading to Noville, a village 5 miles from Bastogne. In the confusion, I lost track of several ammo bearers from the squad. I did not know what happened to them, nor did I see anyone take a direct hit. I was concerned about the gun crew and keeping it intact, ready to fire as we moved from one position to another. Leip was more of a concern than the rest of the squad. At that moment, I almost reversed roles and made the ammo bearer, whom I had designated assistant gunner, and the gunner dropped. Leip back to the 2nd gunner. I did not do anything about my concerns. Instead, I focused my efforts on making the gun available and looking after the safety of the squad.
Hang on.